So, what got you involved and interested in keeping fish?
Um, Probably my father actually had fish, and so growing up as I was a toddler, and some of my earliest memories were just looking up at this fish tank,
Mhm.
and supposedly I'd spend hours just plonked in front of the fish tank, and I
Yeah.
just looking up, absolutely fascinated. And so the first aquarium, had some plastic plants, a
Mhm.
big sort of rock ornament with holes in it, complete with a little crocodile that opened its mouth with the air. The classic,
Yeah.
the classic
Yeah.
crocodile. Yeah. Maybe I think there was a diver ornament, and that was brilliant. And so I have these memories of sort of, the guppy neon tetra combo. And so those were probably some of my earliest memories of fish.
Mhm.
And then growing up, of course, I'd help my father with sort of the maintenance and picking the fish from the store. And so those were, cherished memories. And then we progressed to live plants. I think we got the first live plants were Ambulia
Mhm.
and Anubias, which we kept in the pot. So we're doing quite well. Tank was way overstocked. I think I had a million platies.
If you do.
Our long-tailed. I still have a very big soft spot for the long-tailed, the guppies, the fancy guppies,
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
cobra
Yeah.
guppies. Yeah, no, because we lived overseas in Hong Kong,
Mhm.
so fish were actually quite cheap. So which was terrible for a kid because, you know, I'd pick out what I want and I'd get it, and there's no sort of like, oh, have you got the right tank, or what's your, the kind of questions you get asked maybe in New Zealand, if you're in a good store. So it was just
Yeah.
unrestrained buying. Yeah,
Yeah. No,
and so.
no, yeah, no. I was gonna say no impulse control, but that's from the other end of it, of course.
Yeah, well, you could argue that it wasn't up to me to make those calls as a kid. So yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, I
yeah.
bought what I like. I think I've had a lot of memories of fish. So and so I was constantly thinking about trying to get a fish tank again. And in particular, I had memories of while a lot of the shops down these streets were pretty I don't know what the word is for it, that rudimentary, like basic.
Mhm.
There were a couple of stores that were actually quite, high end, fancy. I don't think we bought anything from them. And so these stores were sort of half marine, half freshwater. And I do recall going in there and seeing these little zebra plecos. Um, and that just blew my mind, these little baby
Mm.
zebra plecos. And they were I think they were like 200, 400. I don't know. They were pricey, and they also had an aquascape tank. I didn't know what aquascaping was until much later, but I'd walked up and it was just blew my mind. They had sand, so it only ever kept sort of gravel, the standard pea gravel substrate. And so seeing sand in a tank blew my mind. So they had white
Mm.
sand, and they had like a carpet, like a semi carpet of might have been hair grass, it might have been something else. I think it was hair grass, and they had shrimp, in the grass, and that just blew my mind. And so I've had these snippets of, guppies in the ambulia and shrimp in the hair grass. And so that kept coming back to me every now and then, and made me decide, I want to get back into fish keeping. And I think it was just on YouTube, and I accidentally stumbled across, I think it was the Green Machine.
Oh yeah.
John?
Yes,
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah, I know
Yeah.
them. Yeah.
Yeah, just stumbled across like his channel just randomly. I don't know if it was recommended or if I was searching for it, and I watched one video, and I was, if you've ever watched, for the viewers out there, search up the Green Machine aquascaping. If you watch one video, you just drawn in. It's very relaxing as well.
Yeah.
You know, the narrator,
especially the shallow tanks that he does, they're fantastic.
Yeah, you can just sit there and you just sort of just watch, and so suddenly I'd watched all of the videos in his channel. I just kept clicking on the next one, and I just suddenly became like, I was like, I need to do this. I need to, because I think to an extent everyone sort of aquascapes. Like, well, not really, but like the essence of creating something that is pleasing to the eye and suits the needs of the fish, you know? So, which is, I think, what some people say is the essence of aquascape, you know, creating something attractive and trying to, you know, harmonious with the fish and natural. And to an extent, I think everyone does that. It's just what level. I think like even a beginner aquarist just thinking, oh, this ornament looks quite nice. I'll put it here and I'll move my plastic plant there. And I think that hole in the ornament will provide for the fish and they'll be able to swim in and out. And so I think for the most part, you know, it was just going to be a natural step once I think for the most part, once people are exposed to that level of sort of aquascaping, you're instantly like, wow. First, I didn't even know this was a thing. Despite the fact that I'd seen some in very early childhood growing up, but it's sort of like, wow, I didn't know we could even get plants like that. You know, I didn't know that existed. You know, I didn't even know this was possible. And yeah.
I think I was the same. Growing up, it was Amazon swords, and that was pretty much it. You know, and they were practical. They were never meant to be aesthetically pleasing. They were just there because fish liked them, and that was about as much I knew.
Yeah. So I just started watching all of his videos, and I rewatched them, and then I got depressed because I was like, well, I can't get any of this stuff in New Zealand. Like, you can't get ADA, Amazonia. To be fair, we couldn't even, at the time of watching it, I don't think we could even get aqua soil or the substrates he used, at least not at a affordable. I mean, it's still quite expensive now, but like, I saw it on some website. It was like $200 for a bag or something ridiculous. It was, you know, you couldn't get aqua soil. And so then I was like, well, I can't do this. I don't have, you know, I didn't know enough. I only knew that his process. But from him, I then started watching others like Aqua Design Amano. So I looked into him because he often references Amano as being his inspiration. And then from Aqua Design Amano, I think I went to George Farmer.
Yeah.
And then from George Farmer, I got onto, I think it was MD Fish Tanks. So I think I started watching MD since the first video with George Farmer when he was just in his little shed. And so that was really fascinating. And at that point, I think I'd already started my first aquascape, which was, it was terrible. It was terrible.
At least you're honest.
Yeah, no, I mean, but I think that's the reality for most people. Well, maybe not most people, but your first attempt at anything, whether that be learning how to throw a ball, cooking, or, you know, aquascaping, like any skill, your first attempt's never going to be great. You know, and I think you should just keep that in mind. And some people are going to be much better or have the resources available to them. And so, you know, there's always going to be some people who are much better at it at the start than you. But I don't think it mattered to me. I think I enjoyed the process, like regardless of how good it looked. Because I think I started off with a piece of wood, a Java fern, some Ambulia gravel, and that was my sort of first, you know, since being aware of aquascape, that was my first sort of attempt. And I'm a bit gutted I don't have photos of it because I think it would be great to sort of show people, you know, this is my first go at it. Don't beat yourself up too much about it.
It's been a progressive movement from here to here, not just straight here.
Yeah, and some people can do that because especially now, you've got so many products available to us compared to when I first started. You could just buy this, buy that, if you got the money, and you could start off with something much better than me. But, regardless of, I think, where you start, there's always going to be a progression upwards, if you keep at it. Yeah, I think that's just the natural process with anything. You're going to get better over time. Your first one's never going to be great, or as good as you can do. But you just sort of enjoy it, and you make mistakes and kind of just keep going. And I think I had the benefit of, I'd watched aquascaping on YouTube for probably about a year before I even did it. So I think it was a bit different in the sense that I did actually kind of know what to do. I couldn't quite execute on it, And getting plants, obviously it was a bit more of a budget, like getting the quantity of plants that a lot of these sort of aquascaping YouTubers use is not as realistic for a lot of people. Like, you're not going to spend $200 so you can fill up your tank just like that. And that's something I want to do with this hobby in New Zealand. Is I feel as though overseas there's this very big gap. There's almost diverging between fish keeping and aquascaping. Like, I aquascape because I'm a fish keeper, and I want an environment that's stimulating for the fish and looks great. I mean, every aquascaper is a fish keeper. Not every fish keeper is. I guess it goes both ways, but there's definitely your other aquascaping can be quite plant centric, like a lot of people. And so if you're only viewing it through that lens, they make certain decisions that maybe a fish keeper wouldn't, or they might not understand why a fish keeper is going to sacrifice maybe the health of the plants so that they can have a sand substrate. Because they may not want aquasoil because they think sand gets the most out of their cories or their apistogramma, so they might say, well, why are you going to do that? Your plants are going to suck growing, but why wouldn't you want the fanciest plant on the market? Why wouldn't you want the most color? Some people are just happy with their crypts, and as long as it looks nice and gets the most out of their fish.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a loaded gun, but it's not at the same time, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
There's very clear, can be very clear distinctions, and it's almost like they're not merging together in the middle. Either it's one extreme, one to another, but not in the middle.
Like the sort of plant centric, but that's sort of what I want. That's what Ty Streetman said, and what I sort of believe in, what I want to do. Like, I set up the aquascaping group, like, not because I want to grow aquascaping per se. Like, it's actually because I want to up the standard of fish keeping in New Zealand. And I thought aquascaping was a great medium by which to do it, which is fun, which is going to get the most out of people's enjoyment. It's very much about the people actually loving your aquarium. And here are some tips on how to do it. I'm trying to provide an environment by which people can learn and share. And I think aquascaping is a great medium by which you can introduce certain ideas. But I'd rather not tell you. I'd rather so much show you or share the things that have formed my perspective. Because my beliefs or my ideas or how I do things it's only based on what I've seen, read, watched. And so my thought is, well, if I can provide a platform by which I can share the things that I've shared, read, watched, you'll arrive at the same sort of conclusion. So I don't have to tell you, do this because blah, blah, blah. Like, you go, oh, okay, I'm going to do this because I watched this thing and I read this thing. And I'm going to look at my aquarium slightly differently. And because, I don't know, I started off with, ornaments and a plastic aquarium. And, I'm not anti-ornaments. I'm not anti-plastic plants, but I'd rather go for why live plants as opposed to why not plastic plants, which is another conversation we could have. But yeah, so that's why I started the aquascaping group, was because I wanted to up the fish keeping, the standard of fish keeping. I mean, imagine if everyone had aquascape tanks, and oftentimes when you say aquascape tanks, people have one perception of it. So it's the high tech ADA style. Whereas I think you've seen with the group is I've tried to really broaden it out. You know, you'll see blackwater aquascapes and
nice
semi-biotope aquascapes. You know, like even the biotope group can be a bit like, well, this sand isn't the correct sand and this plant isn't 100%. You know, it can be just as bad sometimes. And I do regard biotope, especially at the competition level, as aquascaping. You know,
as in itself,
it is, because just you are considering how it looks. Yeah, and it's especially at the competition level of biotope. So I've tried to incorporate all these different styles and try not to be too one style. Even it's hard because there's a lot of content related to those sort of high tech styles. But yeah, so and also low tech, high tech. You know. Because a low-tech tank can look just as good, if not better, than a high-tech, you know, depending on what plants you pick and what standards you set for yourself. And, yeah, you know.
Yeah, I mean, the low-tech, people assume that a low-tech tank is a brown and green, big leaf, the Amazon swords, and nothing much more than that, but it really isn't. I mean, you can generate some really, really vibrant scapes with basic equipment.
It's more so understanding what you can do and can't do, and what plants you can and can't use. Yeah. I think the biggest thing I see is people are trying to build a Ferrari with bike parts when you could make a really good bike. You know, you can't grow certain high-tech tanks, and there will be always people with like exceptions. Like I can grow a Gosso parfait with no CO2 highlight, but for the majority of people, you're going to fail. Yeah. And I think that's the big thing. A lot of even high-tech people are a bit like, trying to do a high-tech or look or style like a diet with the resources, but with not the you don't have the resources to do it. But you could do this, and it could look amazing if you did it with this style. And so that's the other thing I try and get out. I'm trying to important to me to show diversity in styles, is so that people are exposed to that. So when I started off, I only knew ADA style, the ADA, you know, the green machine, aqua soil, plenty, you know, CO2, that kind of thing. Whereas if I was to start off and I was to show people like what could be a good first aquascape that you could then build upon to work towards something else, is an epiphyte scape, wood, and Java Fern low light, because you don't want to, you know, Anubias. And that could look like amazing. It really could. It could look professional as well. It could look like a professional scape, but you've chosen the style that caters to what you have and what you can afford. And rather than trying to do a diorama scape with 2 pieces of wood, no aquascore soil and no CO2, and it's going to be a disaster because you've chosen to highlight, but you don't have CO2 and it's out of balance and you don't have enough plants. So I'd say disasters happen when you maybe underestimate what you can do, or trying something that you don't have the resources for.
Just back to the aquascaping group that you've created on Facebook. For those of you that don't know, in my mind, for lack of a better term, you're kind of a founding father of New Zealand aquascaping. Not in the sense of all the aquascapes you've done, but the way that you've promoted it and pushed it in a really gentle way. But it's gotten people interested in the conversations being there with it and coming with it. And your constant use of social media, regular posting and inspiration and getting people involved has been, in my mind, one of the bigger drivers to getting this to where we are currently in New Zealand.
Yeah.
You've kind of spoken about why you did that, but what was the massive picture behind that for you?
Yeah, well, yeah, no, the massive, yeah. Oh, I have talked with that, and sometimes I'm a bit cynical, but so I say I wouldn't be able to do this without the likes of the Aquascape shop that have taken huge steps for the hobby. Like I would say they are the founding, like they gave me the original base. The Aquascape shop definitely, yeah, they've definitely done a lot for the New Zealand hobby. Like they were one of the first. I think Rick Pullman, I think it's the same name. He had another group set up, and so they were already there. I came in with a plan, so I'm kind of a methodical person, and I was like, I want to make fish keeping better. Aquascaping is a great medium, so I'm going to set up a group. It was based on if I can get enough attention, I can then get a commercial attention, and if there's commercial attention, then that'll further incentivize the people, and it'll be a two-way street. So if I can generate attention, you're going to get financial investment or commercial interest. So they're going to bring in the sorts of products that I want. And then by having those products available, they're going to promote them. And then they're going to bring in more people. And so it's a two-way street. And so I wanted to capitalize on that. So when I first started, I do think, so there was the Aquascape shop already doing it. And then Aquahouse came in. And I believe Aquahouse, so talking to Remy, he said he'd originally, I think he was obviously aquascaping and stuff, but the commercial side of things and actually setting up that shop only came about because he saw interest in the group.
Yep. All right.
And that was my plan. So that was the plan. I didn't expect Aquahouse, a separate store, to pop up, but I did hope that the likes of the Fish Room, Hollywood Fish Farm would start stocking Aquasoil or bringing in products, because now you've got that demand. And then now that you've got those products, you're gonna you're not gonna promote your plastic plants. You're gonna promote your live plants because you've got all this stuff that you want to sell.
Yeah.
And so it was about capitalizing on the commercial and like the people, getting people involved. And so that was sort of phase one. I wanted 3,000 members within 2 years, and I wanted, because that you got to have that interest. People see people. So if you see, there's 3,000 people part of this group, I want to join. I don't want to miss out.
Correct.
And then consistency. So unless you're paying like sponsoring for a post on Facebook, it's there and then it's gone. It's up there in the feed and you're competing with other groups and other things. So my strategy was consistency. So I'm going to post every day, maybe twice a day, 3 times a day. And it's by probability, it's going to end up in your feed. You are going to see it. And I'll join this group maybe once a month. At the start of each month is usually what I used to do on different groups. And so just by chance, throughout the year, you will see one of those posts and you will join. And then you've got to provide value. I think if you continue to provide value to the world, you're going to get rewarded. And so the value I wanted to provide was, inspiration. I wanted to set up a bit of a library, like an online library of Aquascape. So initially on Facebook, you could add hashtags to things. I mean, you still can, but you could have hashtags, and then at the top of your group, you could organize them. So you could have ideas, biotope, African lakes, South America, and you could have these under hashtags, and then you could click on them at the top of the group, and then you just scroll through and you'd see all the different aquascapes under that header. A bit like I don't know, in a book, you'd look through and you go, oh, what are the topics? I'll go to this chapter. Yes, and I'd be able to see, and that was sort of my form of value I wanted to provide, was a place where people could easily access, videos of specific habitats or specific scape styles all in one place in New Zealand, because so that was the other form of value I wanted to provide. And then they got rid of the hashtag thing, and I was a bit sad. I was like, well, but you can still at the top search up like African lakes. At the top of the group, there's a little search bar. Search up African lakes, hashtag African lakes or something, and it'll come up with all the posts that I've done or other people have done under that hashtag. And you can see African cichlid aquascapes or footage of lakes. And that's the other thing I want to sort of not brainwash people, but but by providing a lot of content around natural, like videos of the Amazon videos of, you know, Lake Tanganyika, you develop familiarity with aquatic habitats and an appreciation. So like, you know, someone who hasn't maybe looked into like a rocky river or a swamp habitat, it's not going to appreciate my kind of tanks, these two tanks here, you know, without having, you know, looked into it. And if you see these videos, you may be more inclined to, I want to recreate that for my fish, or, oh, is that how my fish interacts in the environment? Oh, that Oscar, you know, it covers the space of a swimming pool, and it's free swimming and it's outgoing, and oh wow, look at those discus, they're streaming across and back and forth, and they're in the thing, and you know, they're not just stationary huddled in this corner. So yeah, that's the other thing. Maybe if more people saw these natural habitats, one, they'd care, but also just like, you know, you might want to create an environment in your own aquarium without me having to say, do this. You're just inspired or, you know, be manipulated into doing it. You know, if you're being cynical.
Helen mentioned just a little bit earlier, I'll just bring it up. One of the best things about you is that you're very encouraging regardless of where people are starting from, which I totally agree with. Just sort of lurking in the background of multiple different Facebook pages is very much a part of the ideology of your group is encouraging people, giving it a go, as opposed to throwing down the hammer and saying you're doing this wrong sort of scenario, which I think is also aiding and helping.
Yeah, it's not so much where you start, but the fact that you've started.
Yeah,
you know, it's mostly getting people to start as opposed to where you start. Because like once you started, you know, there's a 6-year timeline where you go from here to like there. But provided you started, you know, like
you're away.
Imagine in 6 years how good you'll be, or how many plants you'll have. Because, you know, one of the things as well is like with each scape you have more plants to work with, you know, so that's why they get better. But it's also, how can you elicit positive behavior?